Here we are. Hey guys. You have to look into that one over there.
Sorry, not looking in the camera. There we go.
Excellent. Good evening, people that are out there looking at this webinar. We've really been looking forward to this. It's something I've been thinking about for ages, to get my good old friend John Bantin over here for so many reasons. And I hope that you out there also have been able to follow my news, my email letters coming out to you quite intensively here the last week, the last days, and know a bit about where John comes from and how I know him. For those of you who don't, I'd like to introduce John Bantin. He's from London.
Hello.
John and I have met each other when we both had the same boss, right?
That's right.
That dive boss was the Diver magazine, the Diver Group, and I was working for Diver Group's Scandinavian little sister here in Copenhagen, or not here in Copenhagen, but it was in Copenhagen at the time. And John was living in London, and occasionally we did meetings and stuff together, and we hung out together whenever we saw each other on dive shows and stuff. It was a fun time, and there was lots of nice people from the time. But the funny thing about John and I is that we share a bit of the same history as regards to underwater photography and stuff.
Yeah, that's correct.
And photography as well. See, some of you may already know that I'm originally a commercial photographer by trade. Graduated in 95 or something, and moved on from there. But I did actually manage to work a couple of years as a commercial photographer. Sure. I
should interrupt you there and just say that I gave up being a commercial photographer in 1992. So we're a different generation, if you like.
Yes.
But a lot in common.
A lot in common, yeah. Anyway, John was quite clever about all to do with commercial photography until I came, right? For a reason, education. Anyway, it was a time when things started to become digital underwater. So it was a very interesting time. John and I had lots of long talks about digital photography and publishing in general, diving. We were both, really keen divers, at least at the time.
Yeah. One of the things I noticed was the stuff that I wrote for Diver magazine in English, when it was translated into Danish and Swedish, was very recognizable to me. In other words, Swedish and Danish people seem to understand my sense of humor, which is helpful.
Yes, that's true. I'd say some people say that maybe Danes and English are very much alike, together with the Dutch.
Sure.
Yeah, and maybe the Swedes as well. I don't know. I'll let other people judge that.
Yeah.
Anyway, John has a great sense of humor, and I really enjoy listening to some of the long stories that he has, and he has many stories. The good thing is that I never spent much time in England at the time, so I mean, when he started repeating his stories, I could pretty much say that, hey, that one I've got before or 2 times, and then I wasn't there the next day, so it wasn't a problem, and I could easily hear it again the year after, right?
Sure, that's true.
Whereas some of the people in the office, the
problem is, if you were on a boat with me, of course, if the boat trip was more than 1 week long,
yes,
you then got into the second stage, the second cycle.
Yeah. Nevertheless, some of the times the stories got better. So over the years, so
now that's not fair, because my wife says she knows my stories are always true because they're always exactly the same.
True, but we did actually share some stories together. I wrote in one of the emails that we often refer ourselves to. He's my dad, and we pulled somebody's. It was you buying a Hugifoot once, was it?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. And I told the guys from Hugifoot, which I was selling Hugifoot at the time, that John's my dad. They asked me some questions about that guy John Bantin, and is my dad, and I never thought of it again. And the story just kept running around, and eventually some people thought it for a while there, at least.
Yeah.
We do look equally good, so it could have been true.
I think we're equally tall.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
Anyway, just for letting you know, guys out there, that we have decided to give away one of these dive books that John wrote, Shark Bites and Amazing Dive Stories, for your own choice, which one it's going to be. The best question. I saw a lot of questions coming in already, some more or less serious, but you're more than welcome to type your questions in up here, and we will try to monitor them. Maybe we won't find the best one tonight, we will make sure that the best question have a signed copy of one of John's books and send off afterwards.
Yeah, please don't make the questions too difficult.
No, it'll be easy for even me. Listen, let's just I'm going to be looking over here sometimes just to monitor the pictures that we're going to be that you guys are going to be seeing. So while I'm preparing that, let's just get a quick introduction of your or back view on your photography.
Sure. Well, I've always been a photographer. That's a funny thing to say, but I started as a professional photographer in 1966. Yes, I know, it's the other century, isn't it? And I became an advertising photographer purely by luck, because I happened to go and work for a guy who was an advertising photographer. That's how it works. In London, in the late 60s. What a great time. And through the 70s and 80s, a brilliant time to be a photographer in London. And I was very commercial. I was in the first division. Of advertising photographers. I wouldn't say I was the champion, but I certainly did the top rated work, along with a lot of very, very famous people. And what made my pictures particular, I suppose, as opposed to amateur pictures, which can be very good, is that all my pictures were always made with a purpose in mind. Usually, the advertising agency had conceptualized the picture. They knew exactly what they wanted. It was my job to bring it together and make it work. And so often actually getting the content together was the crucial part, and the photography actually became almost a small percentage of the actual work. We can show you a picture here, for example.
Yeah, actually, I'm going to try. To be honest, that's not the one I wanted to do.
Hopefully we can show you a picture.
Yeah. Sorry about the techniques, guys. I was just going to see how come that one. Oh, yeah, we wanted that one to be first, didn't we?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. See, we'll try to flop it over here.
Yeah. Now, this one I'm particularly fond of. It was a surreal campaign, which meant that there were no headlines involved. It was pure art, and Guinness spent £8 million on media, putting my pictures up all around the country. It was a great time. This was in the early to mid 80s, and I did about 16 of these pictures in total, but they were just merely surreal pictures that reminded people that Guinness existed. So there we are. That's the first one.
It was just an imaging campaign.
And it's just a simple campaign, just images which are all surreal. And this is my favorite of all. And when you saw this as a 64-sheet poster, that's the biggest roadside poster site. It was amazing, because even in England's grim grey winter, that massive blue sky made you feel really optimistic.
Let's see if I can flip over the page here, which I can't for some reason.
Every picture has a story that goes with it. Not so much when.
Yeah, sorry about that, guys. It's.
Are we changing now?
Yeah. Yeah. Oh my God, it's going really well now, isn't it? I don't know why. It's my backup who's opening our new photo studio here. So I'm not actually sitting in the same room as the guy who's doing all the broadcasting for us. Right. He's sitting next door. So
okay, well, so I put this picture on because it's just a picture of a donut. And you can say, well, it's a picture of a donut. The fact of the matter is this: for the ad, it had to be the best looking donut of all time. It was a sort of the Donald Trump of donuts, a really good donut. And I'm going to tell you, this donut was really good. We had a 7-ton truck loaded with donuts. And this was the donut we had to find, which was the best looking donut that they could provide. So even something as simple as that, a nicely lit picture of a donut, gets quite complicated. It's got to be the best donut. And that's part of the story. So that's just merely showing a product.
And the next one here. This. see that one there. Help.
Nearly went for it. He clicked on the wrong one.
Yeah. I'll actually do something else. I'll on.
Right.
And I'll try to do this.
We're just
sorry about that, guys.
It's difficult to be a performer and a technician at the same time, as Lars is finding out.
Yeah. For some reason,
Nearly there.
Yeah.
I'm just going to show you just a few of these advertising pictures, just typical ones, mainly because they have a bit of a story to them. You see,
here we go.
Car on a motorway. Nothing special about that. But of course, it had to be an empty motorway. So I actually managed to locate 4.5 kilometers of motorway that was built but not yet handed over to the public. And I rented it for 3 days. And we did it for 3 days because we had to allow for bad weather. And we had a Porsche Turbo and 4.5 kilometers of 4.5 kilometers of motorway. Well, we got the shot within a couple of hours on the first day. So what would you do if you had 4.5 kilometers of motorway and a Porsche Turbo? Yes, we had a lot of fun those days.
Bring some girl and make a spin.
Wouldn't be any girls involved whatsoever, by the way, Lars.
All right.
I just thought I'd tell you that.
Okay.
This is purely boys' fun.
Yeah. Your next one here.
Well, this one, you could be forgiven for thinking that I was just driving along the road and I saw some horses and I took a quick snap. And that is what it's meant to look like. It's meant to look entirely natural. Of course, the reality is that I had to find a location. I had to find the herd of horses. I had to find a group of horses that would stay together in a group, take them all to the location. Every horse has a handler. Every handler has a hotel room. Incidentally, most of these horses had starred in movies. The white one had crashed out of a wardrobe in a movie called The Time Bandits. And this picture, besides looking just like a snapshot, cost £36,000 to do in 1985. So it takes a bit of time. It took a bit of money. This was before computer retouching, of course. It had to be shot in the camera. And that was part of my skill. So it's all about planning. It was once the horses were there, the photography was fairly easy.
Oh, we got that one already.
Yeah, that'll be a donut, and that'll be the motorway. Now this one is another one where we needed some translucent clear water and a schooner. That's the ship in the background. So in those days, before computer retouching, we had to go to where there was some translucent clear water, and we had to charter a schooner and wait for the weather to be right. Now, ironically, we had bad weather for about a week, so we couldn't take any photography. So I learned to dive instead, and that's the beginning of a riches to rags story.
Actually, just for the people who don't know, that a schooner is a ship, right? So
yeah, that's right. Ship. That's a ship in the background. Oh, and this is another one. You see, this was a very simple bit of photography done in a studio. The problem was that the suit of armor belonged to Henry VIII and was valued at £20 million. And the Tower of London didn't feel like putting it in a taxi and sending it over to my studio. The Science Museum sent Buzz Aldrin's spacesuit to me. That was no problem. But I had a sticking point with the Tower of London. So the only solution was to go to the Tower of London and build a studio within the Tower of London. But of course, we had to do that when the public wasn't there. So I can tell you that I'm one of the few people that's been locked in the Tower of London overnight and come out with my head still on my shoulders. Finally, I think this is the last one, is it not?
Yeah.
This is just a shot which I did for John Player Cigarettes. And those days, cigarettes had a lot of money to spend. So in order to get this simple shot, the whole set was upscaled. If I tell you that the signet ring, the gold ring, was 4.5 kilos of brass, which was gold plated, and the whole set was about 50 feet across, you'll understand that. But that's what we had because we had budgets to do it. So it was just down to me to light it nicely.
Excellent.
So that's my background. That's the sort of thing I did. And better go back there. So that's my background. That's the sort of thing I did, and before I got into diving. And then in 1992, I thought I'd take a year off to go diving.
What was this again? That was just after you took that picture of the schooner. When you learned.
Well, I learned to scuba. No, I had actually learned to scuba dive. That was back in the that was 1979 when I took that picture. But I learned to dive then, so I was an amateur diver. But by 1992, I thought I would take some time off to go diving. I'd just take a year off, you know. Yeah. And suddenly 25 years went by. No, 20. How many years it was? Yes, 20 odd years went by, and I never went back to my old life. And I got involved in the diving industry.
Yeah, because you did that, and how did that go? I mean, because coming from the commercial diving and then, commercial photography, getting into the diving, how did that happen? First of all, I thought I'd like to buy a share in a Liverpool dive boat. I changed my mind on that. I tried buying a share of a dive school in England and realized that was a hard way to make money. And eventually I ended up, because I could write a little bit, but I could take pictures underwater. Because of my photography skills, I could take pictures underwater reliably, which meant that on film in those days, of course, I could go underwater, get the exposure right, get the thing in focus and light it. And in those days, not many people could reliably do that. You know, people used to go in with a camera, and if they'd go on a holiday, and if they came back with 2 or 3 nice shots, they were happy. All that's changed, of course. I remember those days.
That's right. But I actually had the trick, because of my long training as a photographer, I had the trick of being reliable. And I think I got the job as the writer for Diver magazine, not because I was a good writer, but because I could take good photographs. And I really learned to write on the job, as it were.
That was a good old day with Bernard Eaton.
That's right. Bernard Eaton had the foresight to employ me. Yeah. And I did that for many years.
Many people regretted that later, or still.
Well,
he was the one who employed me as well. So that was a bit of.
Well, I got a 21-year run out of it, actually.
Did you?
Yeah. So I can't really complain, can I? I had the job of a lifetime, if you like. It wasn't highly paid, but I spent my time going on holiday and writing about it. You can't argue with that. I used to do maybe up to 400 dives a year. And I calculated that I did something like 350 dive trips over 21 years. That's not bad going.
No, it's not bad. So you went into the dive business and got stuck, and eventually you left the diver magazine. Yes,
eventually, of course, magazines were having a hard time, and it's all about money. And eventually they really couldn't afford to pay me anymore. That's the truth of it. Yeah. So I've moved over to America, and I now write. I'm now more of a desk jockey now. I now am senior editor of Undercurrent magazine, which is a subscription-only magazine that comes out of America.
Not many people from Europe knows this, probably.
No, it's not. It hasn't got a big European following. It will have. It will gradually get that. But it's a newsletter. Ironically, there are very, very few photographs in it. But our job is to write the stories that diving magazines dare not write.
Yeah, but you ended up getting to do a lot of writing, right?
And I've sort of changed from being a photographer, and gradually the writing has become more important than the photography, strangely enough.
That's interesting.
But I still have the library of a couple of 100,000 pictures, which is quite extensive.
Before picture databases and all the big online databases, I was actually talking to John about how we could digitize these images so we could get them online and start to make real money on them, right? And
I think we've missed the boat on that.
You think so? Yeah,
well, because so many people now can take pictures so easily, it's become very, very easy to do.
Yeah, and at the time, I didn't think of scanning 1,000 slides would be a problem.
Exactly.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone can, but then again, back to the consistency, because that's where you differ from. Well, that's hopefully true that I hope that I differ as well. To be sure that when you go out on a job, you actually go home with the pictures you were meant to go out and do.
It's about coming up with the results. That was my reputation as an advertising photographer. Really, was that I wasn't the most talented, but one art buyer summed it up. He summed it up by saying that Bantin always does the reshoot first. In other words, I never had to do a reshoot because I never cocked up.
Great. Okay, so getting back into those magazines shots, because that's basically what you did then, because you had to illustrate some articles.
Yeah.
And I can tell you guys, there's a lot of images in just one single issue of a dive magazine. So putting that together takes a long time, and you had to publish one every month in Diver.
It was a treadmill,
yeah.
But on the other hand, it was a very enjoyable treadmill.
You also had other magazines, you had all the brochures.
Yeah. I did lots of other work, but really, I was very lucky. I mean, I have been away on dive trips with some very talented ex-National Geographic photographers, much more talented than me as underwater photographers, but they weren't making a living.
No.
Whereas I had this contract with Diver magazine that actually meant I could feed my kids, which was important.
Yeah. So, there's a lot of questions coming about Photoshop and which gear was the most interesting and your best encounter. And a lot of these questions we're going to cover later. So we won't get too much into that. But I thought we should maybe just have a look at some of the images that you went out to do, because you said that your strong side was actually to go out and get those pictures done.
Sure.
Because and people should remember that you often go off to a place in order to do something. Cover a destination. If you have to cover a destination, that means you have to come home. I mean, the text is easy. Anyone can write that from home. You cannot redo the pictures.
That's correct.
You really need to make sure the pictures are there when you leave. And the good variety and people representative of the destination.
Sure.
And
one of the things that's changed, of course, is that I used to go off on a trip and come back with a bag of unprocessed film.
Yeah.
Nowadays, of course, you can see as you go, you know what you're getting. Yeah. So it's become far less nerve-wracking, if you like.
Yeah, I remember you had to try and sneak it out of the scanner, so you didn't have to put the slides through the scanner to get them X-ray.
But it was always nice to know that you've got some pictures on the film after it was processed.
True. Okay, so let's try and see some more pictures, and we'll comment as they go. Here we go, and there.
If I use Photoshop.
Yeah.
Now, this is a really bad picture, as you can see. I was swimming along, looking in one direction, and I sensed that someone was looking over my shoulder. I turned around and there was this dugong swimming next to me. So I pressed the button on the camera. That's the first thing to do. And of course, this is where shooting RAW files come into their own, because you can make all the adjustments afterwards. And this was what I shot. And if I just shot a JPEG in the camera, this is what I'd have got, and it would have been no good at all. I think the next frame, which Lars is going to put up, is what it looked like once it was adjusted. And you can see there is the massive advantage of shooting digitally. When you shoot on film and you get it wrong, it's wrong. When you shoot digitally and you shoot a RAW file, you can make adjustments and make sure it's right.
So this one was actually adjusted.
Absolutely.
How come it's wrong then?
Well, yes, there we go. It's the eye. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder.
It must be, yeah. At least the eye is sharp.
Yeah. Well, this is really the picture that got published, and it won a few awards. It won an Environmental Photographer of the Year award, because if you've been to Masa Abu Dabab and seen a dugong there, you'll know that they get mobbed by thousands of tourists. Well, they did in the days when Egypt was a popular diving destination. So I thought this picture, with all these people in it, told more of a story than just a picture of a dugong. And that's the thing, it tells a story. And as I say, all my pictures, I needed to have a function, so they work to tell a story. not just a picture of an animal or a pleasingly beautiful picture. Well, this was about the big giant frogfish at Taba. And, if you look at this picture, you might say, well, it's a very strange cropping. But if you're shooting for a magazine, you have to allow for the fact that there is a gutter down the middle if it's a double page spread, and you've got to have space for the copy to run. So in actual fact, that's why you've got the frogfish on the right-hand page and space on the left-hand page for the copy, and the gutter runs through the middle and doesn't really interfere too much with the image of the actual animal.
So I don't know if people can see my mouse going over here, but so you're saying there's a line, invisible lines.
Yeah, that's where the gutter comes. That's the join between two pages.
It's funny. I got a degree in publishing, but I don't know the English terms of these things you're saying. So the gutter is the line down between, and you mentioned a couple of other things. But there would probably, if I know Diver right, there would have been a lot of text here as well.
Yes, but the headline would have been there under the. That's the title of the story. Yeah. And then the body copy, the text that told you the story, will be on the left-hand page.
Over here, yeah. And
now,
just like this one.
Yes, I mean, this is a pleasing picture of a lionfish. And I think if you shot it for yourself, you'd be very pleased with that. I was very pleased with that. But this is how it got used in the magazine. Again, it's the lionfish is on the left-hand page and there's room on the right-hand page for the text. And that's the thing, isn't it? It's a question of taking pictures that can work in the magazine context. It's not a question just of taking a pleasing picture, because it's not an art gallery. A magazine is not an art gallery. And the pictures only form part of the graphic content.
I have some teachers from the School of Graphic Arts who used to say that it's the total picture you have to look at. When you take a cover, you need to look at, you don't see the image. I mean, I've often seen pictures that I found boring. I mean, this would be a boring picture in a way because there's so much negative space, but once it's covered in text, it becomes really focused around the animal, the lionfish. And the same goes with cover shots.
Sure. Have we got the cover shots? Here we go. Now, this is a picture I took of Michel Cove swimming around the Thunderball wreck. This is the wreck of was a bomber once, a Vulcan bomber. Obviously, it doesn't look like a Vulcan bomber now.
So that's a wreck dive.
Not really. It's just a lot of scaffolding covered in coral. Anyway, I took this picture of Michel. Very pleasing picture as it is, but the next frame we show, this is how it would have been used as a double page spread, and the next picture we show is how it would have been used as a cover, because you'll see there is space at the top for the cover line, the name of the magazine, the masthead, and then you've got cover lines down the side and across the bottom. So actually it's quite a cover is quite a busy in terms of content. It's not just a photograph. And you have to think about that. You have to think about where you position the main subject in your photograph.
So when you actually present the pictures for a magazine, you got to make sure there's space enough for them to both to work with, for the layouter to work with, both if you were able to get a cover shot, but also if you had a spread.
Well, that's the trick I found, was to shoot on a full frame digital camera with a 15mm fisheye lens and not actually try and compose the shot in the camera, but shoot enough space around it so that the art director could actually compose the shot by cropping the part he needs afterwards.
Yeah.
Now, this was a picture that was to illustrate a piece on diving masks. And again, I had to think in terms of photographing it so you could clearly see the mask. And I did actually just retouch the regulator just to get rid of the sort of brand, because it was a bit distracting, and lots of space on the left for the copy.
Yeah. So people ask you, if you do a lot of photoshopping? I think we will get back to that as well.
Yes. To be honest, I've never done a lot of photoshopping because of my training, as it were, as an advertising photographer. In those days, because we shot on film, retouching was something that was really only was a solution for absolute disasters. It was so expensive and so unsatisfactory. so that you had to try and get it right in the camera. And that's what I always did. I always tried to get it right in the camera, and I continued with that discipline of trying to get it right in the camera.
Yeah.
Of course, when you're photographing underwater, you might find some other diver gets into the shot, and you might need to remove them. And so I do use content-aware fill a bit to get rid of unwanted intrusions of reality that sometimes go in. But I don't do much in the way of Photoshop.
No. Doug is asking, what's the biggest challenge for you when going from over water to underwater? Did you ever?
Well, I think
were you able to let go, or I think you pretty much just covered it. But where were the problems? I think
the first thing that you need to understand going underwater is that water is a very different medium to air. And quite frankly, what ruins the quality of most underwater pictures, the sharpness, the contrast, what ruins that is actually the quality of the water. So I think the first step to getting good quality underwater pictures is to get some good quality water. Now, obviously that's quite difficult at times. So what you must do is reduce the amount of water that you're looking through, which again boils down to getting as close as you can and using as wide angle lens as you can on most of these subjects, unless you're shooting macro, where you are, of course, naturally close anyway. It's called get close and then get closer still.
But still leave some space for the...
but then, of course, you still have to leave the space. Yeah, that's right. Yes, now this is a typical case of where I use Photoshop, because here's a picture of a guy swimming past the propeller of the wreck of the Dom Pedro, which lies just outside Ibiza town. And it looks nice and clean, but of course there was a bit of an intrusion in the background. If we just show the second shot, here we are, you'll see that there was another diver and a bit of the wreck that I didn't want. So I just simply lassoed it, and one click of content-aware fill, and the magic of Photoshop software took care of it.
True. So,
well, this is a picture which I was very pleased with. Yeah. I worked with that picture. I was very pleased to get that picture.
You were doing an article for what?
I was just simply down in Egypt doing an article on a particular trip in Egypt. It wasn't anything more than that. I was just illustrating the trip. But, and it got used in that article. Yeah. But as a library picture, it didn't really ever get used again. But if we should go to the next picture, this picture has been used quite a lot. Same turtle, doing the same thing, but what's the difference? The difference is it includes people. Yeah. And what you will find is that when you're dealing with the general media, they want to see people in the pictures. They don't really relate to a turtle. If you just see a turtle, you don't know how big it is, you don't know how small it is, you don't know where it is. You put a person in the shot, people know what a person is. Yeah. They're familiar with the person. They can relate to the whole subject matter. So in fact, a picture of a young lad snorkeling next to a turtle is much more saleable than just a picture of a turtle. So
even if you like the other picture maybe better, this one was the one who got monetized better.
That's the one that got monetized. That's right.
So a lot of people are asking that here, because what they see, whether you see yourself as a craftsman or an artist. That's Mark coming up with that question. Is that what you see yourself as? More of a craftsman going down? Because
craftsman. I think that's a good point. I would be more cruel on that, and I would call myself a hack. But I had to get the job done. I'm working for a job beyond just the picture.
Yeah. So when people say, I really like this picture, so I'm going to take it home and frame it, you can actually look at your pictures and say, this one will never, ever go into a frame, but it will probably get sold a lot because it's got the right qualities for people to look at.
Yeah.
But that's a very important point for people who want to get, maybe commercially successful with the images or get published.
I have to say this. I look nowadays at my Facebook feed and I see endless beautiful pictures taken underwater. Some of them are absolutely stunning. And I can tell you, I know of people who have gone out and bought a compact camera, such as a Sony RX100 and a housing and a flash gun and maybe a wide angle ancillary lens or a macro lens, and they go away and they come back immediately with stunning pictures. But of course they've got the right subject in front of the camera. They've spent money on airfares as well as camera kit. But they go away with not a lot of skill, if you like, but they come back with beautiful pictures that are worthy of being framed. And I'm pleased for that. But so many people can do that now.
Yeah, I agree. So in order to stand out, well, first you have to figure out why you want to stand out and what you want to stand out for. I mean, if you want to be a commercially successful photographer, you have to think a little bit maybe like you do.
Well, if you want to sell something, you've got to consider what the customer wants. It's no good you trying to sell them what you think they should have. You have to decide what they want. It's the rule of selling anything in life, isn't it, really?
Yeah.
Giving people what they need, solving their problems, offering them solutions to their problems, not insisting that you have the solution to a problem that you think they should have.
I've seen that a few times.
Yeah.
So that also covers the question from Osfrid in Norway: what makes an underwater picture successful for you?
Yeah, that's right.
That's basically down to, will it make money?
Well, I'm afraid it is like that, because I did make a living at it. That's the thing. I didn't have another job. If I'm if I was a lawyer or an orthodontist, someone like that who made loads of money and got lots of free time and could spend the rest of my time diving, I would buy the best dive kit. I would buy the best camera kit, and I go off and take some beautiful pictures and I have them all framed, and I would have my house full of framed beautiful pictures.
Would you really?
Possibly.
Let's see.
But I certainly try.
Yeah. Okay, I don't think there's any more pictures here in this folder. Yeah, that's the question. We're going to keep that. How much post work do you do digitally in Photoshop? Blah blah blah. Didn't you sort of?
Well, as I say, I suppose the other thing I do occasionally is clean up a bit.
Or hear it. We can hear us again.
Yeah. Well, as far as retouching in Photoshop, as I said before, I just really clean up pictures. If there's a lot of unwanted detritus or the odd diver's fin that's dropped down in front of my lens as I took the shot, or something like that, something I want to get rid of, I will do that. But I don't really do a lot of post-production work past converting from a raw file to get what I consider to be a nice looking result.
Converting from raw file to JPEG is actually the biggest manipulation you can do, if you look at it that way. So.
Yes, I suppose that is a manipulation, but that's the whole point of digital photography. Kurt Amsler, I don't know if you know his name, very famous veteran underwater photographer. When I first started taking digital photographs, I got my first digital camera, a Fuji S2 Pro, and I was judging a photographic competition with him. And I needed to take a picture of us judges. So I took a picture of us judges with my brand new Fuji S2 Pro. And he said to me, "Are you shooting raw files?" And I went, and obviously didn't know what a raw file was. And he said, and I've never forgotten this, I've repeated it many times, he said, "If you're not shooting raw files, you are missing the point of digital photography." Something to think about.
Yeah, there you go. Make sure your cam can do raw.
That's right.
Make sure you use it.
Yeah.
Well, shooting raw is similar to shooting a file that has way too much information. It's equal to the negative in the old days, where you took your negative down the darkroom and you made a copy, and the copy who had a lot less information.
Well, it was an interpretation, wasn't it?
Yeah, but it was also something less, because you can never get the same amount of information down there. But you could wiggle a little bit with it. You could,
you can
copy.
I mean, you can change color. You can change contrast. The only thing you can't change the subject matter.
In the old days, at least.
You can't change the subject matter now, can you? You've got to have the right thing in front of the camera, There's no two ways about it. If you've got a great picture, no one's going to argue about what you shot it on.
Well, I agree to that. There's people who can do something very close to photography today who looks surprisingly close to pictures. So anyway, so that sort of brings us to another question that was asked about pricing. You mentioned it yourself. You were actually able to make a living of underwater photography. Do you know anyone else actually making a living? I used to make a living when I was young, working in Thailand, but that was taking pictures, or in Australia on the reef, but that was just selling off copies.
Times have changed. That's the reality. Times have changed, because in the days when there were few people doing it, or few people who knew how to do it, you could charge a price. But the trouble is now, so many people are doing it, and so many people are so pleased just to see their work in print. Many people are not interested in getting money for it. So therefore you're competing with people who will work for nothing virtually. Now, when I first started working for Diver magazine, before they took me on a contract, you understand, they paid £150 a page. That was in about 1988. Diver magazine paid £150 a page, words and pictures. Today, now I hasten to add, that was not enough to make a living. That's why I got a contract with them. Today, they pay £50 a page. In other words, they don't pay anything at all.
That's true. So you can I hear this a lot, because I used to be on the magazine as well, and I saw people who bought equipment for a lot of money, and they said, but we can't give this away because we spend a lot of money on camera stuff. I said, okay, then don't give it to us. And that was the reality. And what many people didn't really understand is, and I don't think it's because the magazines didn't want to, they knew they had to keep their feet,
they've got to fill the pages. They need content.
No, but they also needed to make sure that the photographers got something back. They needed to make sure they had people actually going out there. We had wonderful writers, wonderful photographers, but they simply couldn't afford working for the magazine in the end. And they said, hey guys, we need to feed our kids, so we need to take the jobs that has money. But it's not because the diver magazines do not want to pay. We knew we had to pay. We knew they had to keep these people alive. But we just, small specialized magazines, they do not make money, at least in countries.
Well, so often people will phone me now and say, we'd like to use one of your pictures. We can't afford to pay you, but we'll give you a credit.
Excellent.
And I'd say, I can't use your credit at the supermarket.
No. True.
That's a case in point, I'm afraid. Yeah. So it's very, very hard. It's a very hard time to actually make a living as an underwater photographer.
So any advice to people who really want to do this?
Do it because you want to do it. Do it because you can afford to do it. Do it because you get pleasure in doing it. And if you can get some of your work published, that's a great bonus. But it's very, very hard to put it on a commercial basis, because you're competing with people who will do it for very little, if not at all.
I've taken something in that Alex Mustard said to me once. He said, we don't take pictures to get paid for them. We take pictures to make sure that the jobs about going out taking pictures will be paid. He didn't say it that way. Point being, you need to be somebody. So you need to show a lot of images that are actually worth something, and then you will get jobs. And that's the way I've seen it. I sell photography equipment, but I do have quite a few jobs over the year, during the year, where I go out and do stuff for TV channels and stuff. And they do that because they know that I can do the job. And I've, of course, practiced to make sure that I have the skill.
Well, there's always going to be a few people who will crack it, of course.
Yeah, but I can't make a living of taking pictures just doing that. But I think he was right in the sense that you got to use your imaging to get your name, to get a name. Yeah. And once you have a name, you can actually, and I think another thing that I've seen is that you can actually often create your own jobs. I mean, if you know the advertising business, if you know the publishing business, or any other business where that they might need pictures, if you know aquariums or places where they want to post pictures, you can actually go and ask them, say, why don't you show my pictures? Why don't you get them framed and put them up here? Or why don't you make a campaign with these images? Correct. And they will often find a budget for it.
Yeah, one of the things that most professional underwater photographers do now is lead trips where they teach underwater photography.
Yeah.
So
I
in
know
a way,
people have done that.
they're teaching people to compete with them. Strangely enough.
Yeah.
So that's going to happen, isn't it?
Yeah. That's back to the fact that you said you knew skilled discovery photographers who didn't actually make money on it. It's about being a good.
Well, they have done, but the era has passed. That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah, I know.
That's the reason. And diving magazines, for example, or all magazines, they're really having great trouble keeping the wolf from the door.
Okay, we're going to move on a little bit to some of the stuff that people have been asking a lot about, some of your shark pictures, because these are the areas that you have really made a difference in. Done some wonderful shots. Let's see if I can...
yes, people always like to see a picture of a shark.
Yeah, don't they? And...
Yeah, people always like to see a picture of a shark, and that's why I've done a few books on photography and books on diving, but my last book was a book which had the word shark in the title because I've realized that people would buy it, non-divers would buy it as much as divers, because people like to see sharks, and sharks have a mystery about them, whether good or bad. There are always people who'll be interested in sharks.
So let's see some.
Now, this is an interesting one, in as much as many, many years ago, Jeremy Stafford Dyche discovered a place in the Bahamas where bull sharks were aggregating. And I went there with him and we photographed bull sharks in close-up, and it had never been done before. But of course, once it's been done in the diving world, there's no reason why somebody else can't do it. So suddenly, of course, the world and his wife went there to photograph bull sharks.
Yeah.
So you can't be proprietorial about it. You can only just if you're in at the beginning, you just have a short window of opportunity where you have the monopoly on the subject, and then it soon goes. Now, this one was a picture I took of a great hammerhead, which I wanted to use on the cover of my latest book, Shark Bites. But the truth of the matter is this, that any publication, you've got other people involved, and there was a graphic designer who wanted to design the cover of the book, and she didn't like the picture.
Oh, no.
So, that's a problem. And my book, my picture, but she didn't like it. So she did something different.
Yeah.
And I think you have to understand that any production like a book has more than one person involved.
Yeah, that's the same as magazines, right?
Sure,
So
absolutely.
Very often people say, why did you use that picture?
Yeah, no, well, you see, this is going back to this business of being in at the front. Stuart Cove told me that he'd found this place where there were possibly great hammerheads.
Which year is this?
This will be about 2013, I think it was.
Yeah.
And he said he was getting a group of friends together. He said it was risky because we might go there and they might not show up. We might not see anything at all, but let's go and give it a whirl. And we went there and we put down bait. The hammerheads came in the space of 3 days, I took 2,500 pictures of great hammerheads, which of course was a new thing. Within weeks, the word was out and everybody was there doing it.
Yeah.
So there's nothing special about these pictures now.
You got your article.
That's right. Now, this was a picture taken in the same place of a nurse shark. And you might say it's quite a pleasant picture of a nurse shark. But actually, if we can look at the next picture, this is a much more saleable picture because it tells a story. It's got people involved. People always make a picture more saleable to a picture editor because he then knows what he's looking at. And the whole environment, the whole story of the process of getting the pictures is sort of illustrated in this one moment of time.
Yeah. There's a couple of guys asking whether you work alone when you take pictures. Or do you have any helpers? I remember the old days. The word was that the Discovery Channel people, they had 2 or 3 cameras with them, including helpers.
Yeah.
How many helpers do you have?
Well, thanks to digital photography, where you put a big card in your camera, that you don't have to then dive with several cameras. And
no, but they're thinking mainly about the light. Did you do anything where you have external lights?
Not really, because most of the dive trips I went on, I really went on as a typical diving client, but went on with the purpose of getting an article and getting pictures. So often I found myself diving in a very solitary way, because it was a way of not getting other people in the pictures, and also getting the pictures that other people couldn't get.
Solitary meaning you were pretty much alone, and just with...
You'll get my license revoked from the BSAC if you tell people I was diving.
We can't have that, can we? No. What will you do then?
No, well, I don't know. Yes.
Yeah, but it's also people want to. Yeah.
Well, I certainly wasn't diving alone while this picture was taken.
True.
Yeah.
But continuing with that, because you have people in this picture, and you say that's why it's become sellable, because you have people in it.
Sure.
But most of the pictures you have people in them, because you say it's a good idea. Because, and I remember this, because you can show your family member, your aunt, you can show her 2,000 pictures, but it's one picture where I'm in, or someone else will say, oh, that's the greatest picture. And that's the way other people are looking at it. So you know this, and you use that. But how do you get all these people in the pictures?
Well, the best way, of course, is to have your own tame model.
Yeah. How do you
tame them? The problem is, of course, with us guys, is we always get it wrong. We find some beautiful young woman to be in our pictures, and you take them away on dive trips, and after a couple of years, they start having children. I don't know why it happens. And so... That's...
They will die. Okay, so apart from you should find a model that is keen but not keen enough to have kids.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. You shouldn't mix business with pleasure. I think that's the truth.
No, but seriously, we all enjoyed the picture of a very gracious-looking diver in the front, and looking at a lot of the males floating in the water. I'd say I've seen probably the best models being female.
Sure. Well, unfortunately, diving is not a very flattering sport. So I think you've got to
that was my question, is how do you make sure, because it takes a lot of work to, I work with models, people modeling for me, and it takes a lot of work.
Yeah. Well, you have to have a rapport with people. I've dived with a few young women who I haven't married, and who have been very good models, because they like being photographed and they were very good at it. But of course, when you get in the water, it's very hard to communicate with them. So they become the director in a way when you're diving with a girl, because they do things, you photograph it. All you can say to them is that you do beautiful things and I'll get the pictures.
Okay.
You can plan. Otherwise, you know what it is. You can discuss the photograph you're going to take ad infinitum, and you get in the water and their brain gets distracted and they go off and do something else entirely.
Sure, but you don't have any secret hand signals that helps you, or any?
A bit of this and a bit of that. Nothing. Only basic stuff, because you've got to keep it very simple.
Okay. So there's a question up here again from Osrid saying, "Do you have any bad experience with diving with sharks?" Let's just keep the tension a bit for a while there. But let's look at this picture. You have a girl snorkeling next to a hammerhead.
This is a picture of a very dangerous animal swimming with a great hammerhead shark. And that's a male. They've got the males have magnificently tall dorsal fins. But I think this sums up. I mean, people, if you're reading books, they'll tell you that great hammerhead sharks are notorious man-eaters. Well, there we are. I think we're starting to learn that they're not. But again, this was a girl who was a very good free diver, and very good. She understood photography, and she pre-planned what she was going to do. She said, "I'll swim down and swim with the sharks," and I said, "Yeah, and I'll photograph them."
Okay,
so it was as simple as that.
Simple as that, yeah. Mm-hmm.
So you grab what you can.
See, can I say something here?
Yeah.
Because I've knew this image. I actually forgotten that you took it. And I think it's in your book, but I haven't read your book.
Sure.
Sorry. No,
I didn't know you could read.
No, I can see the pictures.
Yeah.
But it has this graphic sense. I thought I've seen it many times, and I often mistake it for being a drawing.
Well, this is a case where it's an unusual angle, because it's taken with a 15mm fisheye lens.
It's like a cartoon.
And I've got in very unnaturally close.
Yeah.
You know, that's the
You
truth.
must be incredibly close.
About 2 inches off the dome port.
What's that, centimeters?
Oh, centimeters. 5 centimeters. Sorry, yeah. 5. Sorry, I've been working for Undercurrent. They have to do everything in feet and inches for the Americans.
Yeah.
You get very close, and it's just beautiful lighting at the time. Everything worked well, and the sharks were swimming around very close. This is a female. This has a less tall dorsal fin.
Yeah.
Now, I did do a bit of photoshopping on this because there was a diver in the picture originally, which I had to take out in the background. And I only took him out because he was looking rather unnaturally posed.
Yeah, because I do like that there's actually people in it.
Yeah.
You know, it's a beautiful shot.
Well, this is the sort of photograph that you just have to grab when the moment comes.
Yeah.
You've just got to be ready. And this is why when you've got to be able to use your camera without giving it a second thought. It's got to be, it's all about muscle memory, really. And it happened in a moment and I got the shot.
Yeah. Interesting. So I think now we have a picture which is not very big, and we stole it off John's Facebook page because he forgot the original.
Yes, I'm sorry about that. I forgot to bring the original with me. But all that's interesting here, I think, is the fact I was at Tiger Beach, and at Tiger Beach, what happens there? This is in the Bahamas, near Grand Bahama. The bait box is lowered into the water, and lots of sharks come round, including quite a few big tiger sharks. Now, these are big tiger sharks, and they move quite ponderously, and you're busy photographing one and you don't notice the others. And one came up behind me and grabbed me and swam off with me. I suddenly found myself accelerating through the water at an unnaturally fast speed.
Where did it grab you?
It grabbed me by the BC.
How did it?
So what do you do when a 5-meter tiger shark grabs you?
You go along with it.
You let it.
Yeah.
That's right. The most important thing is not to struggle.
Okay.
And of course, eventually he let me go, and then I was able to swim back. Luckily, around that area, the seabed isn't very deep. I would have been in desperate trouble if the tiger shark had gone off over a wall and gone down to depth, but it didn't do that.
So you went back to your mates, and then what happened?
So I went back to carry on photographing, and then about 20 minutes later, it happened again.
It grabbed you again?
Yeah, and it was turning into a bit of a habit. I think the second time it grabbed me by the tank. And all I can say is that the other people on the dive didn't want to do the second dive.
No, they didn't.
No.
Funny enough.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah. But if you get grabbed by a shark, don't struggle in its mouth because those teeth are very sharp.
Yeah. It's lucky it didn't grab you in the arm or something.
Well, that was lucky, yeah.
Yeah.
I did think the first time, I hope I'm not bleeding too badly, but actually I was lucky.
Yeah. Amazing. Okay, that's enough for the shark pictures. Thanks for all the questions out there. You've been really nice popping them up to us. An hour has gone by, and I think I promised people it was going to be an hour and a quarter, an hour and 15 minutes. And maybe there's some other questions coming up out there. I pretty much think that we covered most of the questions here. More female dive models. Yes, we need to look into that. We have one folder more with which I've called JB's Dive Stories, and I think we're just going to pop into them. Oh, sorry, I forgot to turn on that one here. There we go.
All right, here we are.
Yeah, here we are. Oh, wonderful. How are you out there?
I thought I disappeared.
Yeah. Anyone still out there? I hope you are. And
hope you're not too bored.
It's quite enjoyable for me sitting here talking, chit-chatting to John. Keep those questions coming in, and let me find the last folder with pictures here. There's a couple of really amusing stories behind them. And do you remember them? Do you remember the stories? Do you need to see the pictures?
Oh, yeah. Well, this is a case in point.
Hang on. We need to change.
Yeah, coming up.
Yeah, coming up. There we go.
Called Amazing Diving Stories. I wrote a book called Amazing Diving Stories, and I wanted to provide this. This was what I thought would make a good cover picture for the book. But of course, I was dealing with the editorial department of the publishers, and the cover came under the auspices of the marketing department. And of course, the marketing department didn't want to be told by the editorial department.
Is it always like that? They're
Well,
like being told. Or they
This
just
is
have
a
different
this is a
opinion?
big company. Big, you're dealing with internal politics of a big company. So they didn't use any of my pictures for the cover. They went and bought one from Getty, and it was a very boring picture of the original.
How do you
cover.
like having a picture book out there where they go and buy another underwater?
Yeah,
shot?
well, Amazing Diving Stories didn't really have many pictures in it, but it was, and this picture now, this was the second edition. This was the publisher had changed by this point. I was dealing with a much smaller publisher, but even so, she did use one of my pictures. This is one of my pictures taken at Barracuda Point in Civitan. But again, she wanted to choose the picture.
Yeah.
No way was she going to take any direction from me because I was the writer, not the designer. So,
no, but it makes sense from her side.
Yeah, that's right.
See what else you've got here.
Well, dolphins are always popular.
See, John, I see that you're actually touching the animal here.
Yes.
Yeah, what's going on there?
Well, this was a dolphin that's from the rehabilitated dolphin at Sanctuary Bay in the Bahamas. So they're all dolphin that have been have grown up in the company of humans in dolphinarium and circuses and so on, and have been rehabilitated and given freedom, but they still like people. But I mean, I must just quickly tell you of a story. I don't have a picture with me, but my wife and I, many years ago, went to Nuweiba in Egypt, where there was a Bedouin boy who had befriended a wild dolphin. And this dolphin would come and swim with him, and you could pay to swim with the dolphin and the Bedouin boy. And it just brought in some extra revenue to the village. So we went down there to do a story on it. Now, the dolphin liked to be rubbed down with half a brick.
Like a building brick.
A building brick.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because he enjoyed being rubbed down with it. And the Bedouin boy would keep this building brick in the water for the purpose of just rubbing along the flanks of the dolphin. And the dolphin seemed to enjoy it. Well, of course, I took a photograph of my wife doing that, but it looked like she was clubbing it with a brick. It didn't look right, So I took pictures of her stroking the dolphin with her hand.
Just like this woman here is doing.
Yeah. Well, of course, that got published. And of course, we had the inevitable letters from people saying she shouldn't have touched the dolphin. It would have damaged the dolphin. To which my wife retorted, they ain't never touched a dolphin because, of course, dolphins have incredibly thick hides and they're incredibly tough. But there we are.
Yeah.
It's a perception, isn't it?
Well, I guess by taking a picture of it and publishing it, you are actually all of a sudden becoming part of something completely different.
Yes, that's right. That's right. It is telling a story, and maybe it's not the right story.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And people will interpret it their own ways.
Yeah. But in fact, the story here, this picture, this is one of the dolphin trainers, if that's for want of a better word. This is one of the people that looks after the dolphin in Sanctuary Bay. They're totally free to swim in the ocean.
Yeah.
But of course, because they've been brought up being fed on North Atlantic herring, they don't really know how to capture big fish, and they'd never capture enough small fish to sustain themselves. So they tend to keep coming back every night to Sanctuary Bay to be fed and to be looked after, if you like, and so they're the healthiest dolphins you'll ever meet. And they're big animals, as you see, and very happy to go swimming with people.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, this is a case in point.
He's touching it as well.
No, he's not touching the dolphin. The dolphin is touching the diver.
Okay.
This is a crucial difference.
Yeah.
But this is another one of these Sanctuary Bay dolphins. The guy was a television gladiator. I had to do a story about him. And we took him out to Sanctuary Bay, and he swam with the dolphin. And this is a picture I got. But funnily enough, the Diver magazine never published this picture. It's been published elsewhere. The Diver magazine never published this picture because they were too frightened of the repercussions from readers saying that he shouldn't have contact with the dolphin.
Because I actually remember they had a media pack with this picture.
Eventually.
Yeah. Oh, eventually.
But at the time, when I did the article, they wouldn't use it.
No, I can see again, I think it sends a message publishing pictures like that.
Yeah.
And here's a picture people know from the introduction.
Well, funnily enough, this picture, I was underwater or in the water, and this is probably the most published picture of diving I've ever taken.
Yeah.
And it's not even underwater.
Yeah.
Because, of course, when you want to illustrate diving, picture editors want to see divers. And so here's a cluster of them, and that's really summing up how a non-diver sees diving.
Yeah, but how did you take it? I mean, how long did?
Oh, I just got in the water. It was a calm day, as you can see. I got in the water with my camera. I was with a diving club. It was actually the Gay and Lesbian Underwater Group, funnily enough. Yeah. And you might ask what I was doing on a boat with the Gay and Lesbian Underwater Group. And
Taking pictures.
And I'm not telling you.
No.
But the great thing about these guys was that they were all totally organized. So when I wanted them to do this picture, they were all game to do it. They all got involved, and they all worked under my instructions. I got in the water, everyone lined up on the deck, and I just simply counted, and they all went at the same time, and I had my camera on motor drive, and I just got the shot.
Okay, so they never went up and down again. It was just
a one-off shot.
One-off shot, except that you shot a lot of times.
I shot about 12 frames in the space of them leaving the deck and hitting the water.
Yeah, but it is a nice picture, and it's my wife saw this picture and immediately turned back to it, and again, I think that's how people react to it. Because you can see the joy and the blue water, the calm water, sort of the blue sky, and the nice boat.
It is definitely a non-diver's view of scuba diving.
I would say, yeah. So, but it's maybe that picture helped a lot of people taking their dive certificate.
Maybe right.
Yeah. Okay, this guy asking if you use flash underwater, if it's on TTL or manual. I mean, you said getting a lot of images in your fingers.
When I used to shoot Nikonos 5 cameras, of course I shot manually. When I got into
but with the flash on TTL or what?
With the flash manually.
Oh, right.
Yeah. When I got into more advanced cameras, film cameras, such as the Nikon F80, I think was the first one.
Yeah,
F80.
Let's just remind the viewers here that it's when you say film camera.
Yeah, I mean wet film, not digital. Analog cameras.
Yeah,
that's probably better. They had at that time they had developed a protocol with the flash that you actually got good TTL flash, and that worked really well. And my first digital camera, the Fuji S2 Pro, had that same digital protocol, the same protocol with the flash as the F100 it was based on.
Yeah.
There we are. But of course, once you got into digital cameras like the D200 was my next digital camera, that didn't work anymore. And quite frankly, I didn't find that TTL flash worked for me anymore. And I had to quickly go back to what I used to do, which was using the camera on manual and using the flash on manual and working it out.
Yeah.
But it's not actually rocket science. You very quickly get a hang of it. Yeah. I mean, recently I had a customer. He bought a lot of photographic kit. He bought a Canon 5D, a Mark III, a housing, flash guns, and he went off. And he said before he put it all together, I put it all together for him and made sure it all worked. And he said, "Could you set it up for me?" And I put it on 200 ISO, a 2/50th of a second, f9 on RAW.
Yeah.
And he took these pictures, which have won awards, because of course he went to North Carolina and photographed ragged tooth sharks. And when he came back, he said, "How did you know what to set it on?" I said, "It was just an educated guess, really." Yeah. It's amazing what you can get away with if you shoot RAW files.
Yeah,
that's
true. How many different cameras did you have underwater?
Over a career. Oh,
yeah.
I constantly was. I suffered from aft deck envy. You know, whatever camera I had, there'd always be someone with a better one, which meant I had to go back and get a better one, and it was totally unnecessary. I mean, the pictures you see here, you're looking at, have been taken on all sorts of different cameras, but you know, I started off digitally with a Fuji S2 Pro. I went to a D200 Nikon, then I went to a D700 Nikon, then I went to I messed out the D300 Nikon, then I went to the D700 Nikon, then I went to the D800 Nikon. I mean, I'm just a sad case, really.
Yeah.
And that's because people on boats always look at you and say, "Oh, what are you shooting on?" And you feel a bit embarrassed if it's not the latest thing. Yes, pathetic, really, isn't it?
But you've been a Nikon guy.
Yes, I've always been Nikon because in 1966 I bought my first Nikon, and I've always had Nikon lenses. It could have been a Canon. It didn't work out that way.
It's amazing how important that is. You know, my bank made sure my kids had the account with them.
Yeah, that's how
pretty
they do
much
it.
the same thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Never change banks.
Yeah.
Okay, let's see if there's any more in there. There's actually an extra picture here. What do we see?
This was where I went out to PNG to do a feature on the Rhinopeus, which was sort of only found in that part of the world. And I went out there and I could not find a Rhinopeus. And I came back, I wrote an article called "The Rhinopeus is Missing." Because I did lots of great diving, but I could not find a Rhinopeus. And I went back, of course, later on. This was to Lolawata. And they took it on as a question of personal pride. And of course, every dive I saw 3 or 4 Rhinopeus. So, they were just
there's one here as well.
Endlessly. Yeah.
Let me just say for the viewers that John brought several of these nice pictures here. So I think we just brought 2.
Yeah, 2.
But I think the funny thing is anyone would be sad about the fact going out on a destination, not finding what they were hoping. You just go back. You just went back.
Well, I had to go back. Yes, of course.
Bastard.
Yeah, you are talking to someone who went to Truck Lagoon twice in 2 months.
Oh, yeah, why not? Yeah, I don't need to do that.
No.
Did you ever flood any camera housings?
Yes. Up until the day I met Lars. Now, this is almost true, actually. It wasn't the day I met Lars. Lars showed me one day a camera housing which had something called a vacuum leak test.
No, did I really?
And Lars showed me this. It was a Hugifot,
Yeah.
the first people to introduce the vacuum leak test. And I never flooded a camera after that. Now, I have to say this, because of the requirement to get the job done, I used to travel with duplicate kit.
Yeah.
I had 2 of everything, because if I flooded a camera, I couldn't come back without a job done.
No.
Once I got the vacuum leak test, and I have to say, Nauticam, you can get a vacuum leak test. I think a lot of them do vacuum leak tests now.
Most today, yeah.
Now. But in those days, when I first got that first vacuum leak test, people kicked and screamed that their housings didn't need them. I always found that very amusing, because, of course, the housing doesn't need it. It's the user that needs it.
Yeah.
It's the user that fouls up. And the two times that I really did bad floods, I can tell you that it was entirely my fault.
After the Hoogie check, or
No,
before that,
long before that. Yeah, I never flooded. I never flooded a housing once I had a green light to look at. Green is good.
Green is good, and I have been in the water with the leak detector going off 2 or 3 times and saving the camera.
Well, if you've got a big dome port, I mean, we've all come up with the dome port facing downwards, going, oh, but it's I've had some near misses like that, but I've flooded Nikonos 5s, and I've flooded the Fuji S2 Pro when the dome port fell off as it was being handed to me from the aft deck of the boat.
I had the orange Nikonos 5 at some point, and I was really careful with it. And I lent it out to a professional photographer, taking it to the Red Sea to do a fashion shot. And they flooded it on the first time. Yeah. So they went back, and they had everything insured, and they wanted to give me a new one. But they couldn't get the orange one, so I got the green one. Yeah. And I accepted that, and I regretted it ever since, having the green Nikonos, because the orange one is the iconic one.
No, but I had a green one and an orange one.
Oh, you did?
Yeah, I had to have 2 of everything, don't forget, you see.
Of course.
So that was the days in the long distant past, when I had hair and youth.
And youth.
Yeah.
Doug from Norway asks if you snoots on your strobes. I think he's asking because there's a very nice light on the fish there. You can see it's coming partly from the back.
Yes. Yes and no.
You placed your flash in a cave and you shot the fish.
Well, it's just positioning the lights, isn't it, really? Having an understanding of the lighting. I mean, it's something I've done all my life. I have lit quite a few things. But no, snoots are really used by people doing macro work, I think. But there is a little bit of a trick you can do, of course, on the RAW converter. You can do the vignetting, the opposite of they put it into enable you to get even lighting, but actually you can go the other way and sort of focus things down. But it's mainly just a clever use of the positioning of your flash
Well,
guns.
nobody will believe that now, since you mentioned the vignetting thing.
No, that's true. Yeah. Oh, it's all done in Photoshop.
He was the first one seen.
Yeah.
Okay, so 1 hour and 15 minutes has gone by, and I think we just have this one last picture, and then we're done with that.
Well, this is a picture of octoporn, because this is a picture story I did of an octopus courting its girlfriend and consummating the act. And then, of course, I did a whole series of pictures, and then she dragged him off to do some shopping. Isn't that a familiar story?
Hardly. Okay. Here we are.
Here we are.
So let's hope there's still people out there. An hour and 15 minutes plus some minutes has passed by, but we didn't exactly start on 8 o'clock.
Well,
so
I think our audience deserves a medal for resilience, don't you?
I think they do too. Yeah. Let's see in the stats afterwards if they're still here. We still have one thing to go, and it's it's a competition. And to be honest, I thought it would be quite easy to find the question that was best. Would you have any idea which one was best?
Oh, I think I'd have to look through them, especially since many of the questions were written in Danish, and I need to get a few translations really. But
I think we can't exactly figure out who is.
I think not at the moment. Let's just make it a surprise when it arrives. Oh, because we need their postal address, don't we?
See, people had to sign up with their email.
Oh, do they? Right, so you can email them, right?
Probably.
Well, look, there are two books. This is a book of no photographs in this book. It's a book of stories of interesting things that happened to me, but I'm not in the stories. I've written it third person. I'm just the fly on the wall. Interesting things that happened during my 21 years as a diving journalist. And this one is written first person.
Look up there.
Sorry, there we go. Sorry, looking in the wrong place. This one's written first person, and it's stories of encounters with sharks. And I can assure you that I haven't written any of the stories where nothing happened. Okay.
And he's right. Guys, thanks for hanging out there. John, thanks for coming over here to
my pleasure.
Denmark. I think we need to have a pint of beer now. At least, thank you. That's been the.
You don't drink in Denmark, do you?
No, we don't.
No.
We go to England and do it a lot.
Oh, right. I thought you just did it when you were abroad.
That's what I mean.
Oh, because that's right. England is abroad for you, isn't it?
It is. Yeah.
How foolish of me.
Yeah. Thanks, guys, for hanging out on this webinar. We hope to do one more in this season. I won't reveal the dates or content just now, but let it be a surprise to you. I really appreciate you guys being here. So, John?
Yeah, well, it's been a great pleasure talking to you, even though I couldn't see you. But I'm sure that it's been a pleasure talking to Lars here. What's your name again?
There you go.
Yeah, there we are.
Guys.
Old age. Don't mock it. You might get there soon yourselves.
Yeah. Take care. Have a good evening, people.
Same to you.